Welcome everyone in Rails Refactoring Podcast, and today there's Marcin with me.
Hello.
My name is Wiktor, and we'll be talking about our new book we are releasing in Arkansas, which is called Frontend-Friendly Rails. So as Marcin is with us today, and he's the author, he can tell us something more about this book. I was reading the parts of it and it's really good, but I am not really sure what's in this book at the whole, because there are many topics covered about the front-end and the relation to Rails.
Yeah, so basically this book is a set of techniques and set of practices I've just researched and implemented in my project. So in fact, the book is not as can be seen as a whole, but it can be seen as a set of independent practices you can apply to your code. And I have written it that way just because I feel those techniques are pretty useful because they are replacements of Rails defaults, where Rails is the best when you try to build a static when you try to build an app which works in
standard way,
like for example request response cycle with HTML views served by the backend.
Yeah, and jQuery frontend, nothing more.
And basically it's all about replacing Rails defaults with better options, which is possible without sacrificing the simplicity and ease of use of Rails stack.
Yeah, one of the topics in this book, which I remember reading this fragment, is about UUID. And I remember we were working in one project where we just used UUID, and it wasn't really a problem. I mean, we just had this additional field, and there was only a problem if you wanted to do some non-standard thing, more standard than just going with where or with find by methods. So what are you describing in this over 10 pages chapter with UUID?
Yeah, so to start this topic, UUID is a technique that is more like bringing you benefit in a long term. Like, it's not a technique where you implement it and it's instantly, wow, this application is just improved a lot. It's more like a technical change which allows frontend to be more independent from the backend.
Yeah, it makes like without UUID you can go with this frontend fast solution that frontend doesn't need to wait on the backend.
I mean,
especially if you have these related objects and you just need to know the IDs when you want to proceed with doing something with those models or objects.
Yeah, so the biggest problem here is like when you create things or update things, but creation is the most crucial part. Like to do it right in a front-end first approach with a standard way, with sequential identifiers, you need to consult your backend or mock this sequence of increasing integers. But with UUID, you can prepare a prototype which is quite ready to be deployed even with backend, and you can just do not change your code, just connect your API and it will work. So there is another very important thing apart from UUIDs, which is more like a technological choice. It's a problem of Rails generating identifiers on the backend. So you need to consult backend every time you create something. You constrain yourself this way. So the second very important aspect of this change is to allow frontend to generate UUIDs. So you can just, for example, implement more sophisticated creation techniques like, for example, autosave or batching your changes and stuff like that.
Yeah, maybe in the beginning you don't need to have UUID, but the flexibility it gives you in the future is really beneficial.
Yeah, so as many technological or technology decisions or approaches and decision about them, you don't need UUIDs at the start, but it's better for you in terms of implementing it to start early. And since the process is rather straightforward, and in the book we present a solution which will work also with legacy code bases.
So it's easy to just implement UUID without touching your current installation. I mean, adding it to your toolbox.
Yeah, so
replacing everything with UUID.
So with legacy code bases, the process is more complicated, but it's still achievable. I mean, in the book there is a step-by-step solution which works regardless of the database used and so on, which is in which you replace sequential ID of the resource with the UUID one. But in vanilla applications, new applications, all you need to do is to just toggle one flag and you're ready to go. You got this UUID built in, so that's even easier.
I remember you were working on this, researching this topic, and there was some database problems related. Like there was something about MySQL. Are you touching in your solution? Are you touching the database, or did you go in another way?
Yeah, so in the book I present the solution which is database agnostic. I mean, you can use MySQL, you can use SQLite, you can use even MongoDB if you want, because it's all, this UUID part is handled completely by the Rails side. But performance-wise and maybe it's a little bit simpler to have for example, Postgres, which allows you to generate UUIDs on the database side. This is because you just can implement it, and there is also an aim of doing things like frontend can provide ID, but don't need to. Like if UUID is not provided, it will be still generated on the backend side and sent back. So
for the sake of simplicity.
So Postgres makes it a little easier.
Yeah, you got this add-on that was called UUID.
So there is a legacy plugin extension called UUID OSSP, and there is PG Crypto, which is a preferred solution for newest versions of Postgres. So, as I said, solution in the book is a little more complicated, but it works everywhere and can be used in legacy code bases. And if you are starting with nice defaults like Postgres and you are creating an app from scratch, you can even simplify it more. And as in an implicit way, I have shown how it can be implemented in the next chapter of the book, where I describe JSON API, and inside the schema you can see how it is implemented with Postgres too.
Mm-hmm. So is it compatible with Find, for example, in Rails, your solution with UUID?
Yes, it is compatible just because Rails, in Rails you can replace your primary key with something else. So all those find methods are starting to use UUIDs instead of IDs, which can be a problem really if you want to just, for example, retain the old behavior. Like in some application, in some subset of applications, there is a problem like I'm switching to UUIDs, but if someone, for example, has a link in its bookmark on the browser, which uses the old ID, I still want to, for example, make a redirect to the new
It's
URL.
important for SEO when you had a lot of people linking to the site.
Yes, so this problem also can be solved because during the process we are like relying on the fact that we have those sequential ID and UUID duplicated, so we can still reference the old ID, and that makes it simpler.
All right. And you mentioned before about a JSON API, and I remember that was like a basic for, or like the base for making this book. It was supposed to be the main topic of this book, but it changed a bit rapidly, and I wanted to know why.
Yeah, so JSON API is a pretty interesting topic, but in fact, since I wanted to make this book useful for my readers and share my knowledge about the topic, because let's be honest, like everyone is concerned about backend code quality, everything is concerned about front-end code quality, but often this middle connection part is like, okay, so issue an HTTP request, you are done, nothing interesting
and
here, move along.
The problem hits like rather quickly. I remember we were working both in one project like 1 year ago, and we had this API that was like, it was ongoing invention. Like all the time we had something else invented. We had denormalized data first, and then we went to the normalized data. But then there was a problem of pagination, which we didn't solve, as I guess, because we didn't have to. But it was something worrisome that we didn't have any template on how to proceed with our API and making the simplest stuff here in the place. And as I understand, JSON API standardized this and provides you the specification of what you should do. So can you tell me more about it? What does it give me? Which parts of API does it give me? Does it solve the problem of authentication for me, or is it only for example, the pagination and the format of the data?
Yeah, so I wrote this chapter about JSON API because it's pretty common to developers entering the project tries to like reinvent the best practices of their APIs, and that's time consuming, that's error prone, and is often it's like you don't foresee what you will do in 6 months, so it's better to follow the standard, and JSON API is a standard for formatting messages, like formatting responses, and
so I don't need to think about any details.
Yeah, so you just take a default, which is well taught by their authors.
Yeah.
It allows you to implement tons of features like pagination, for example, like conditional prefetching relationships and so on. It doesn't provide it to you. But this response format is all about making it possible in an easy way.
Yeah, so we got an easy and standardized way to do it.
Yeah,
and they don't provide you the authentication, for example?
No.
Okay.
It's only a response format.
Okay,
fine. And in fact, since it's a response format, it, for example, is suitable for prefetching relationships. Like, I want a list of songs, but with album covers.
Yeah.
It allows you to do it in a very easy way, but it doesn't provide you means in your application to do it. You need to implement it by yourself.
Yeah, I understand.
But it's very, very easy to just, enter this whole concept into your response format. So, for example, if you implement it and new clients will just use it and old clients won't, your old clients will still work.
Okay.
And it will be like out of the box for free.
And are there any Rails or Ruby games that supports us with this? Or
so there are plenty of them, and I present the solution which is stable. It's called JSON API serializers.
What do you mean by stable?
I mean, for example, there's a very popular gem called Active Model Serializers, which in its release candidate versions allows you to serialize to JSON API. But since it's a release candidate, I didn't want to just present this solution. JSON API serializers works just fine. And I present the solution where you can just have your old API, have your old response formats, and implement those JSON API responses like on the side, like they will work together. So it's very crucial if you are maintaining an app which is still working. So you need some time, and JSON API also has this topic covered. Like if you want to make JSON API, you need to use a custom content type for it. And I show how to add this content type to Rails and how to use it.
Yeah, because I remember there was a blog post about this.
Yeah.
I think I can link it in the show notes. Okay. And going back to the front end, which is like, judging by the title, it's like a theme of this book. I think the most like valuable part of this book, maybe because that's a pain that I had recently, was getting onto some modern JavaScript tools into our installation of the Rails. I mean, if you want to have sprockets and ECMAScript 6 and CommonJS, so some kind of moduling, right now it's not that easy or close to being really hard.
Yeah.
And the Rails ecosystem isn't really developing to help with this. That's my opinion there. And we were trying lately in our project, one big project with one client, to go onto Webpack installation, which is a bundling system for Node.js. And we just started pulling stuff from sprockets into this Webpack installation. And so how much of the scope of installing, of getting the modern front-end installation is there in the book?
Okay, so let's start from explaining why you need a custom stack or Node.js stack and so on. This is all because default, Rails has sprockets as a default.
Yeah, with a CoffeeScript.
Yeah, with CoffeeScript, with jQuery, for example, and so on. And it's a great default if you want to just use static HTML views and sprinkle it with your jQuery code. So you're on the very basic level of making this front-end interactive. But today we are working with big JavaScript application, big sophisticated front-ends, rich user interfaces. And this default is starting to be a problem for us. So since Sprockets has defaults which makes it a little bit complicated to connect all the dots with newest technologies and so on, which in my opinion are big productivity monsters. Like if you start to use ECMAScript, you will be way more productive. At least it was my experience.
Yeah. And so parts of CoffeeScript are in ECMAScript 6, and it was like the intention of the CoffeeScript author to be there in place before ECMAScript comes and gets released.
So they stolen some things from CoffeeScript, but that's great because CoffeeScript is also a very elegant language. But there is a problem with such transition. First of all, it's quite hard to grasp all the concepts, all tools. It's not like Rails. With Rails, you get a full package. In Node.js world, there is a movement of doing everything as a very small modules. So you need to connect those pieces together
and know how to connect them.
Yeah,
it's really a big problem for people, as I see, that they come to the JavaScript world and they don't know what is the most popular, most useful, and the best tool they can use for example, testing. And they are stuck in this.
Yeah, so there is so many tools, and you need to understand which tools for what. So this book, first of all, presents you the goal. So you want to use the newest JavaScript, but still have CoffeeScript because you have some
old code maybe.
Yeah, You want to have modularity of your code because you're writing sophisticated application.
Yeah,
those
requires exports.
Yeah. You need to have test stack. You need to have production builds, so your code will be minified and so on.
Yeah.
You want to have, for example, linter, so you know your practices are the best in terms of writing code.
Robocop, right?
Yeah, it's like Robocop. It's called ESLint. So we explain what every tool you use does. Mm-hmm. We explain how to connect it together.
Yeah,
and all is made in a step-by-step manner. So there are plenty of articles about how to do it. Like internet is quite full of it, but I haven't seen, and I very wanted at the beginning of my path with Webpack and stuff. I really wanted a solution which will explain me what I'm doing and how to do it.
Yeah,
and I believe I achieved it in this book, so I hope for me it would be a ton of value. I mean, I would save a lot of time. So if I succeeded in this book, in explaining it correctly, I would be very happy as an author because this will really help people.
Yeah, I start to notice among the developers they are often like, maybe not every one of them, but I noticed that a lot of people are like copy pasting code, not understanding what it does, and then having the troubles because the basics aren't there. So I really like this approach when you explain each tool what it does. 1 year ago, when we were starting the React.js by example book, you wrote a blog post that was the Hitchhiker's Guide for JavaScript tooling, and it was like this. It was describing what does these all packages do. It's like when I asked my colleague what the karma is, there was a high possibility this colleague may not understand what it does when he wasn't using this, because there's so much tools in JavaScript and there are few like fixed ones. So we got the karma, mocha, and tape and
yeah. So for example, you just described Karma and Mocha, but in fact they are not the same
but
thing.
We often pull them into the same drawer of tools.
Yeah, so this is a big problem. And I believe when we wrote this blog post, it was like number 1 on Hacker News.
Yes,
it was totally awesome for us, but it only showed us the scale of the problem. Like, many people are struggling with it, and many people had like strong opinions. I believe like, you don't need all this stuff. Just write all JavaScript and don't use modules. So they were desperate. They were frustrated. Like, all those tools I don't want. I ignore them. I just write the old code. But there were people like, you just can't live without those tools.
Yes.
So there were so many wild different opinions here, and I believe such texts that describe what all those tools are, what they do, and so on, are very needed.
I'm really the fan of ESLint lately. I was writing the blog post about it, and I encourage people to try it out with the book. It's really the small section in the book. It's not that big, and it's like it's like a game changer for developing dynamic code that is interpreted, because you don't need to run the code in your browser to check if it's valid. It doesn't have any problems or possible problems. So what is your take on this? Because you and I were trying out ESLint in company like in the same time, and I remember when we both were really relieved it's here.
Yeah, so ESLint is like your safety belt. Like ESLint not only shows you the styling issues, it shows you like basic programming errors, like, oh, you mistype your variable name and so on. And if you think about it, if you go, for example, to people from .NET, from Java, from Haskell, whatever which is statically typed or compiled.
Yeah.
They can't live without it, and we are living without it, like
yes.
in JavaScript world. But it's such a huge help that it shouldn't be. I mean, it shouldn't be even thought about. Should I use ESLint or not? Just use it because it will make your code.
It's like 10
better.
minutes.
Yeah, it's like 10 minutes, and you will have better code and way better developers' feedback.
Yes.
And if you enter it in your Circle CI as a compile step, it's the
it's an insurance that the code works.
Yeah, it's the insurance and the easiest way to just piss off your colleagues that don't need to write JavaScript code. I don't want to write JavaScript code.
Yeah.
I would just sprinkle it with it, and then ESLint will crash them during the build, so you will maintain the quality of your code.
Thank you for the talk, and I really appreciate that you found the time.
Okay, no problem.
And we really strongly encourage you to all to just check the book and give us your feedback on the email. And for you all, the podcast listeners, we get something special. We get a discount code.
Yeah, so I believe this discount will maybe encourage you to buy the book. Remember that we have a refund policy, so if you don't like it, this may happen.
Yeah, just write it.
Yeah, just drop us an email. This book is not only about that, not only about UUIDs, JSON API and Webpack.
It's about the philosophy also.
Yeah, there is a philosophical topic of front-end decisions. I specially selected it because it will make you a better developer. You'll understand your decisions and consequences way more. Mm-hmm. Also, there is a small chapter about cores, which many people, surprisingly for me, many people are struggling with cores. They don't understand how it works, and they don't understand how to configure it correctly. And I covered this topic in the book. There is also a chapter about Pusher, so-called real-time API, where you can
WebSockets.
Yeah, WebSockets, basically. And I will show you a solution which is surprisingly simple. I mean, it's really simple, and you can... And it's not a problem with maintainability. So if you have these real-time add-ons, it's often quite tedious to maintain consistency between user actions and actions coming from real-time.
Yeah.
So I'm showing a solution which will integrate those two parts and make this way more maintainable.
All right. So the coupon code for our podcast listeners is the podcast FrontendFriendly. And it will be also in the show notes of this show. So, thanks you for listening, and see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.
Thanks.